Hey guys, welcome to Auxano, where we discuss our guests and the causes of change. I'm here with Taylor Fitzpatrick.
Kilpatrick.
Killpatrick. Oh, this is so embarrassing. As per ritualistic with our remote guests, let's get deep. It is a card game where it consists of three levels with Icebreaker, Deep, and Deeper. So, without further ado, I will show you the cards.
Ooh, okay. What was my first cell phone I ever had? Oh, okay. It was the LG flip phone. I think it had some name that was like numbers and letters. But it had like a blue um the whole thing was silver. It had like a little blue reflective thing on it. And man, I loved that thing. I was like 6th, 7th grade, maybe 8th grade. I don't know. Um, I was using my mom's before then, and I had to pay for every text message, and it was like adding up. And um, yeah, definitely life changing. Back in the day of the old cell phones, kids these days wouldn't get it, but
Yeah, yeah. I also grew up with a. The first phone I got was when I was in middle school, maybe. Yeah, middle school, and I definitely got like the Verizon flip. Moving on to level two. This is deep. Let me know if you can't see it. Maybe it's too close.
oh wait, do I pick which one or?
Yeah, yeah. You get to pick.
Ooh, okay. If you started your own business, what would you want to do? I love this question because um, everybody, I'm sure, at some point has thought about what they would do if they won the lottery, right? And I actually
Yeah.
have like a pretty extensive um, idea. And like I have a spreadsheet somewhere that like has all of these percentages because of course I'd like pay off my debt and buy my parents a house and all that. But ultimately, I think I've gone through my own like journey of self growth and really dug into a lot of these like spiritual practices and modalities that have shown me so much and like really shed a light on just so much that I have to work with to grow. And so I would love, um, ideally, if it's like a large amount of money, to just have a company where ultimately the purpose is just to pay people a living wage, whatever that is for wherever they are, to give them that stability, but then provide them the opportunity to find what it is they truly love, what they actually want to do. So many people, I think their reservation is they're like, well, I can't make money. Like I love animals, but like I can't really make money just like loving animals. And so I would love to give that opportunity to people because I think, you can find something that fulfills you and is also not to say everyone's going to be able to be a millionaire with what they love, but to still be able to live. And then within that, I would hope that I would have a bunch of people on staff that can provide the things that I have found help me, like human design and like feng shui and astrology, like all these modalities where if people are interested and they want to learn more to help them, therapists, like life coach, all that stuff, they have access to that can then help them in their own purpose and journey, and they don't have to worry about the money part. So and then eventually, hopefully with their success, they would somehow give back, whether it be to the company or to others, and like help others also reach their own dream. um, so yeah, that's what I would do if I could start my own company.
Well, I actually really love that. I know, I usually just run through level three, but one of the staff members I currently have now, she was asking me like, "Oh, like, what are you gonna do if you can like sell your company? Like, if you could sell your media company?" And I asked her, "What are you talking about? Like, what would I do?" Like, she's like, "Well, what do you want to buy when you're like successful?" And I asked her, "What could you clarify?" She's like, "I don't know. Like, what car do you want to buy? Like, do you want to buy new clothes?" And I remember, I think the shock in her eyes when I told her that I would find myself a success when I could at least have one of my staff have living not living benefits, um, a livable wage and full benefits if I can pay that. And I think that she's taken aback. Like she gave me like the what do you mean? Like that's not a normal response, but I don't have very expensive taste, and I drive a 2008 Honda Civic that I've like talked about already for like the past four podcast episodes, but I'm like super
Yes,
proud of my
Honda,
ride
Team
record.
Honda.
Team Honda, let's go. Sorry. Yeah, VTEC. But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Um, but moving on to level tree.
Oh, okay. Those are both good. I'll do you believe in destiny and fate? Why or why not? Um, I mean, it's kind of a complicated answer. Both yes and no. I believe in my own definition of destiny and fate. I think it's really easy to hear those words and immediately feel like everything is predetermined and we don't have free will and there's just like this plan that already exists.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think that that's true. I absolutely think we have free will, but I do think that certain parts of our lives are, um, yeah, I mean, I guess destined. Like, I don't know the extent of what I think about this, but I do think that our souls kind of choose what life they want to enter into when they come onto this planet as a human. And that doesn't mean that like every single step is laid out, but in general, they know what parents they're going to have and they know what strengths. I'm super into human design. So, like, that'll say like what traits and gifts and, certain personality things we possess. And also, they have like an endpoint, like, okay, this lifetime, I'm really going to learn how to I'm going to learn how to embrace and embody my emotions, or I'm going to learn how to um, overcome challenging obstacles, like something more vague like that. But then we have the opportunity to, make those choices in life that ideally will lead us to that. And eventually we're going to achieve what our soul came here to learn, but how we learn that is up to us. But I do think certain things, like, I also agree in soul contracts, certain people you meet, you kind of agreed to meet beforehand. And so in that sense, yeah. And I think we all have like a individual purpose, something that we're good at and that we are here to gift to the world, like our own strength. Um, but yeah, I don't think it's like super, super specific. And I think we can find our own way there.
Wow, wow, lovely put, lovely put. I start the show off asking all guests, when you were a child, what did you want to do?
Oh, I honestly don't really remember. I mean, I know I wanted to be a lawyer at some point, but I think that was at the point where I was aware and conscious of like, oh, you need money. What is a job that's going to get me money? But I think before then, I truly just wanted to, I mean, it sounds so like generic, but like I wanted to live freely. Like I didn't grow up in poverty, but I didn't grow up with a lot. We were middle class. I didn't get a lot of vacations. Like my parents couldn't pay for my schooling, which is totally fine. But I felt like a lot of the living without worry, without that like pressure of like, how am I going to pay my next bill? Like, how am I going to travel? That was always there. And so to me, I just wanted to be able to live without that worry. And that just seemed very like, you say that answer to someone and they're like, right, but like, what do you want to do? And so I think I just kind of learned and was conditioned to like, okay, I need to actually pick something. And in order for that goal to be achieved, I have to be able to make a lot of money. which, I've since changed, but I did pick lawyer because I thought it would be lucrative, but also, you can fight for things that you believe in. Obviously, there's a lot
Yeah,
more to that, but at my young age, that was something that I was drawn to.
it's crazy because there was actually a once upon a time where I was also trying to become a lawyer, even going so far as to joining mock trial in high school. Even doing like mock events where I would be on like the prosecution side. So I think it's very cool that you also had that experience. But now that you are not a child, now that you are an adult, what life advice would you give that child?
That's a great question. I think I would say, oh, it's hard to even say out loud because I know how resistant I would be to hearing it, but
Mm,
not to let the world influence me in ways of like should. You know what I mean? I've always been a people pleaser. I've at a young age I learned that at least my reality was that I was responsible for everybody else's feelings. And if
mm,
someone wasn't having a joyous, like positive experience, then it was on me to correct that. And um, so usually that just meant keeping small, keeping quiet, and kind of feeling out everybody else and only saying what they wanted to hear. And um, it actually kind of led me to become a person with the ability to be very manipulative. I wouldn't say that I manipulate people, but I learned how to because I'm like, well, I need to make sure that I make this person happy. I need to make sure that I come off as a certain way.
mm,
And that has caused the most pain in my life is doing that and then not being able to be myself and therefore not getting the love for me. Like I got love for someone that I wasn't actually. Um,
mm.
and so I think my tip for that version of me would be just to yeah to not be influenced by that and to trust my own self and my own um, desires and to not feel shame about who I am.
I think that's very profound in the fact that you're able to have such strong self awareness, especially when it comes to giving advice to your, I would even say, inner child. Because that person we used to be definitely still lives within us. Um, Now, currently, how do you honor yourself?
Wow, another great question. I think starting my podcast was a really good first step. Because I still, as much as I do know where I struggle and I do have self awareness about places that I keep small and ways that I'm not showing up authentically, knowing and doing are not the same. And
Mm,
so, um, even though I know that, it's difficult to act on that. Um, and I've wanted to start this podcast for, probably since 2020. Very typically, I spent the pandemic like thinking about what's important and what I want, and
mhm,
I just couldn't get myself to do it because I was so afraid. Like, well, what will people think of me if I actually say what I think and I actually share these parts of myself that I was taught to believe were bad or weird or fucked up or something like that. And um and even now, like, I have started it, and that's really liberating in some ways, but there are still times where I have these episodes or topics that I want to cover, and then sometimes even record it, and I take weeks to release it because I have this fear of, like, well, what happens when people actually listen to it? And um,
Mm.
so I think in general, starting it is a really great way to honor myself and to remind myself that even when I'm recording it and nobody is listening, it feels so powerful and so empowering for me to just say what's actually inside and to let that out. And then almost every time after I record an episode, I come out, I record in my closet, and I come out of my closet and I just feel, almost metaphorically, like I came out of the closet in a way where I'm just like, I feel so lit up and I feel so me and so free. And um I kind of like coast on that for a while. And then if I do end up releasing the episode, it feels similarly after that, because I usually, right now, I feel like most of my guests or my listeners are people that I know. But hearing them reach out and be like, wow, like I actually feel similarly, or I thought the same thing, or I really related to that, like that makes me feel like I'm I'm serving others in a way by helping them admit things to themselves. And I know the question is about me, but I truly think for myself, showing up and doing that for somebody else is a way that I honor myself, because I think that is one of my gifts, and that's what I'm here to do, and that's what I'm really good at. And leaning into that is really honoring for me, and it is a form of self-care.
I feel very strongly about that, in agreement again, which is, I think, is actually really cool how there's so many parallels. Because when I was, long story short, I was working at a company, and I was doing internship work for a nonprofit called Recruit Military, and I spoke about this just in the past, but they essentially were saying like, oh, like, do you want just this talent acquisition job, or do you want something else? And I was like, anything else you guys could give me. But it was my mentor. His name's Raul Torres. Raul looked at me and he was asking what I really want. What would I regret before I died? What was something that I truly wanted to do if I was on my deathbed, and I'd have a regret, saying like I should have done that before. And it was actually starting a media company and starting a podcast also. Um, my company tagline is where authenticity inspires hope and cultivates community. And I mentally, I knew that I would never be Joe Rogan, or I would never be Lex Friedman or Angie Huberman, but I couldn't compare myself to somebody who's on like chapter 671. In the same way, actually, that I was listening to your podcast, and I love the direction that it's going in. And I can't compare myself to like your chapter 50, your chapter 60. It wouldn't be fair of me to do that. So I really love how you're able to honor yourself by serving others. How do you find your place of peace? Is definitely what I wanted to ask. Because serving others can definitely be an arduous task when it comes to, not everybody is going, everybody is different and everybody is their own person. So to take a break from even the serving, how do you, how or where do you find your place of peace?
Definitely in nature. um I spent some time growing up in Idaho, in like the middle of nowhere is where my grandparents lived, and I loved everything about it. You know, that was I really lived there right before and as I was able to start forming memories. So I have memories of the place and I have memories of feeling just pure happiness and freedom. Um, but not a ton about like who I was at that time. But then I moved to Pennsylvania, also kind of the middle of nowhere. Like we weren't in any big city, but um, I think as I was growing up, it not that I didn't like being outside. I definitely did, but it wasn't like a huge part of my life. It wasn't a focus. I was always very social. I'm like, what are the people doing? How can I be seen? You know, I wanted to just be with people and be feel like I was seen, even though I wasn't actually seen. I learned later, but um, and then I and I had this problem. I mean, with everybody, but especially with my boyfriends growing up, where I just everything that they liked, I decided I liked. Right, like the kind of music that they
Mhm.
liked, the activities that they liked. I wanted to be that so that we could be as close as possible. And my my last boyfriend before my now husband was a large gap in between. I was like freshman year of college, but he and his family were very outdoorsy. They always wanted to do hikes and he wanted to spend a lot of time outside. And so I was like, oh, same. I want to do hikes. I want to do that stuff. But then as I was doing it, I really did feel safe there. I'm like, oh, I actually am loving this, not just because he's loving it, but because I am and because I feel, um, you know, I feel me here. I spend a lot of time in my head. And when you're in nature, there's just so much else. And you just feel like the things that I would be spiraling about in my head just weren't really important. And so, you know, similarly, then we broke up and I had a lot of time where, same thing, I kind of ran back to like, who's paying attention to me? How can I spend more time with them? Um, but then with my now husband, he's also very outdoorsy and we moved to California and it's just so beautiful here and there's so much opportunity out in nature. And um, being in nature also gives you a lot of time to actually sit with yourself. And I feel like that's something that I avoided for a long time because, again, I was like, how do I make people happy? And I didn't know who I was, like truly, without the influence of somebody else and without the desire of like, how do I please this person? But being outside and, you know, it ties into the podcast. Like, yes, I am serving people and that makes me feel like I'm honoring myself, but it's also me sitting with myself and being okay and loving myself and realizing that I don't need the validation from other people. Like I am me, and when I sit in nature, specifically, I would say like mountains or lakes is where I feel like, and the forest, like that kind of vibe is where I feel the most serene and like part of it. I do just feel like a part of something bigger. And I sit there and I look around and there's no buildings or, you know, cell phone towers or like anything like that. And I just feel like this is what it's supposed to be. And this is how we are supposed to exist within this world. And I'm not against cities or communities um, or anything like that. But I just think the farther away and the more excluded we are from nature, or at least for myself, the farther I feel from myself. Um, so my peaceful place is definitely outside in nature, and honestly, alone sometimes is where I feel just truly peaceful and able to be me.
My friend Brendan has been really instrumental uh, in my healing process for mental, emotional, spiritual. He's a huge fan of saying subconscious action done in repetition become the subconscious mind. So I wanted to ask what your mantra is in that, what I imagine um, to be like your place of nature. Like I just imagine like birds chirping, grass, uh, bright sun, maybe sunset. But what mantra do you meditate upon?
I think it's always changing, based on a podcast I listen to or a book that I read. Um, so I wouldn't say that I have one specific mantra, but I think something in general that I've been trying to embody and I kind of come back to anytime I feel myself panicking or getting too far away from myself is just that it is what it is. I think, as an overthinker, it's really easy to start trying to attach meaning or reason behind certain things and need to know why someone said something or why this turned out this way. And, often that is around something that we can't change. And so when I catch myself spiraling, I try to just accept what is, remind myself like it is what it is. And then, what can I do with this? What can I do going forward from a place of self acceptance and self love, and just not dwell on what could have been or what should have been. Um, yeah.
I'm really impressed with the resilience of your mentality. Like you have like this veracity of like like self awareness. I would say where you're just like this is and not this is because like you just there's a realist mentality in the fact that what you're experiencing might pass, will might and will pass. Um, was there ever a time or a place where you weren't able to do that?
Oh God, yeah. Most of my life. Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes back to what I said earlier, just, I mean, I think everything ties back to our childhood wounds, but just feeling like everything was on me or, um, I'm not entirely sure the exact moment or the reason that it came about, but I definitely have. I think my core wound is abandonment. And
Hmm.
so I think so much of my negative, I liked what your friend said, like my more negative subconscious actions, I think, come from how can I make sure this person doesn't leave? Even if it's somebody that I don't even care to have around. Like it doesn't play favorites in that regard. It's just like I don't want to, like, if I leave somebody else, that's different. But if somebody rejects me or quote unquote leaves me in some way, abandons me, then that's when I really hone in on like why, what could I have done, what should I have done, what did they expect me to do, what were they thinking when I didn't do these things. And so I think and I appreciate everything that you said, and I think my resilience there has come from just so much time spent like dog paddling or like panicking, right? Like trying to stay afloat, that now
Hmm.
it's a lesson that I was just forced to learn or I would have drowned. And I'm just finally at a place where, it's not that I never return to that energy, but when I do, I'm able to stop panicking, take a step back and just remember like at this point that is out of my control and my energy isn't best spent there. It's best spent in the present, which I think is a daily struggle, being in the present. But um, yeah, I would say more of my time has spent not being in that place than being there.
Hmm. I like how you use the word best spent. How what activities are you doing now that you feel like your energy is best spent in a specific way?
Yeah, that's another one that is always changing, but I think um, time spent intentionally in general is really grounding for me. Right now, my morning routine is that I get up and journal, and I keep my phone in the guest room. So I try to avoid using it until I've done all of the things that I know help me feel my best. And of course, I slip. I definitely get on my phone just to quote unquote check an email real quick, and then 40 minutes later I'm like, damn it. But typically I will get up and I journal. I try to just do, I've heard different words for it. My old English teacher called it word vomit. I know Julia Cameron calls it morning pages in the artist's way, but where I just get up and write 2 to 5 pages, like just whatever is on my mind, whether it's a dream, it's what I want to do. If I feel like I can't write, I just sit there and like blab. I'll just write whatever I can think of. Um, so I do that. And then I currently I'm really into having like a personal cacao ceremony, which is like the pure form of like chocolate. Um,
That's so cool.
and yeah, and I'm part of this human design community, and they're super into it. They're the ones who got me into it, and they talk about they do it every single morning, and um, the place that I get it from has like instructions where it's like, okay, when you're making it in the morning, spend time in gratitude, like gratitude for Mother Earth for providing all that she provides, like for the cacao specifically, like the people who harvest it, like all you go through this whole thing. And I kind of do a shortened version of that, but then I spend time just talking about everything that I'm grateful for that morning. Sometimes it's the sun shining, sometimes it's that I got, a good night's sleep. Sometimes it's that my dogs are there. Like sometimes I feel, if I'm in a lower place, I'm not overflowing with gratitude, but as I start going through it, there are more and more things, and I just take that time to kind of be present and focus on that. Um, and then while I'm drinking the cacao, I set my intention for the day or the week, depending on what headspace I'm in. Um, and I think, I still struggle here in that, like, great, I set my intention, but then so often it kind of slips away. I set it and I feel great, and then I go through my day or I go through my week and I don't really remember to come back to that. The monkey mind comes in, the pressures of your day, what you have to do, productivity. So I have been I also do a not every day, but I'll do a tarot card pull, just asking like what energy do I need to embody to achieve this, or for me to return to. And like today, for example, I did that. I took a screenshot of the card and then I put my interpretation of it. So like today's was be swift to dismiss doubts, distractions, and fear, or something like that. And I have it on my phone. So every time I look at my phone, it's reminding me, right, this was my intention for the day. How am I upholding that? And then
Yeah.
I have a reminder twice a day as well to revisit my intentions. And it's one of those things where like it seems like a lot, and it can feel like a lot. But what I noticed before was that I would do all of these spiritual practices, but I almost felt like I got to a point where I was doing them to check the box. Like, great, I meditated this morning. Great, I set my intention. I journaled. But I wasn't actually getting the benefits from those because I was doing them to say that I did them. And I don't like that, right? Like, then it's like, what's the point even? Then I spent an hour and a half doing those things to get really no benefit from it. So right now, I'm really trying to focus on my intention, um, both for my day, but also in everything that I do, right? Like if I decide that I want to scroll on Instagram, am I doing it because, I follow a lot of accounts that I think are very inspiring? Am I doing it to feel inspired? Or am I doing it because I just feel like I need an hour to just like decompress? And if that's the case, that's fine. But I want to make sure that whatever my intent is, I'm aware of that. Otherwise, I just get so lost and then the day ends and I feel like, bad about myself. And it doesn't always have to be productive. It's not like every day I'm like, I need to do these things. Sometimes I'm like, I just want to care for myself today and I want to relax and let myself have rest. And that's great too. But um, yeah, so there's a lot of different things, but I think ultimately being more intentional and mindful is at the root of all of them.
For me, it's a huge reminder because I think in the modern day, we're always bogged by the paradox of choice. So I love how you're talking about moving with intention, moving and execution. When I was actually listening to your podcast, you were saying that you were part of the startup world. Is that is the moving with intention what got you out of the corporate environment, so to speak?
Um, Not my own intention. I wasn't feeling fulfilled at my job for sure. There was a lot of things I loved about it. Um, and I still would say it was a step up. I think every job I took was in some way a step forward for me. Um, but it wasn't my choice to leave my job. They were just doing reorganization and tech companies right now, a lot of them are doing something similar.
Right.
And so it wasn't me realizing I wanted to go that direction, but I firmly believe that it was the universe acting in support of me and kind of saying like, because I was unhappy with a lot of things for a while, but I didn't have like a, well, I'll quit and do this or I'll quit and do that. So it just seemed silly and um unwise to do that. So I just wasn't, but I was also getting increasingly dissatisfied and further away from myself, I think, the longer I was in that. And so I do think that all of the things I would ask or state to the universe, like I want to feel more aligned and I want to feel in my purpose and all of these things, I think that was in a way a response from the universe saying like, well, you want these things, this isn't it. So here I'm freeing you from those shackles. And so now I'm in a place where I am being intentional. Like I'm still out of a job, um, which is definitely scary in a lot of ways, but I'm not letting myself just apply to things and just jump right back into like, okay, well, I know this job isn't for me, but it's going to pay a lot of money. So I'm at least being intentional with how I'm moving forward, um, and what I'm looking for within the career space. And I don't know that that's in tech, or in a startup, but I also don't know that it's not. I'm not. I'm very detached from the outcome, but I'm certain on how I want to feel.
I really love that because I was talking to when I was in the military, you meet a bunch of different people, and I was talking to a pastor. He was a Christian pastor, but he was saying at the season of my life that I was in, I had a lot of doubts and insecurity, and his advice I thought was amazing. Was we can't actually always move based upon faith. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. We can't always move based upon certainty. You just have to take a leap of faith. And I think because of that quote, kind of like living in my mind, like rent free, at the time I was planning to transition out of the military as well. And it's everybody talks about how it's like the securest thing in the world. You do 20 years, you get a pension. But at the time, I wasn't sure what the mission was for anymore. I wasn't sure what purpose I was serving, or it was a mission and a purpose that I no longer believed in, unfortunately. Uh, I really do resonate with how you talk about searching for purpose and yearning for it. But I also know that there is a discipline to also searching and executing the purpose that you believe in. How do you keep yourself disciplined?
Hmm. So many good cues. I I think I still struggle with that a little bit. Um, I mean, I think discipline is actually the answer. Like just being able to check myself and check in with how things are aligned with me and what my current values are, and um yeah, just kind of doing a inventory of everything from my job to the people I spend my time with, to where I'm living, and just being brutally honest as well, I think is really important. I think it can be so easy to say, like, well, like I've been friends with this person for 20 years. Like they know me and I know them, and like of course we're going to stay friends forever. And I mean that's not a specific example, but um I don't want anyone listening, my friends, to be like, "Oh my god, she's trying to leave me." Um but like being honest about that and being like, "Okay, yes, like they were an amazing person and source of growth and support for me for 20 years, but are they still? And is my energy still like well spent there? And am I getting back energy and getting back what I need from all of these things?" And, even if sometimes you can recognize, okay, this job actually isn't for me or this person's not for me, and you don't have to be able to take a step right there. You don't have to say, okay, I'm quitting my job tomorrow because it's just not right for me. But being able to identify that and accept that and say like, okay, that's something that I need to keep at the front of my mind and really pay attention to, and like how long am I going to let this take from my energy as opposed to give back. um So I think, I mean, you've mentioned a couple times like that I'm self-aware, and I think I very much am. And for me, that's a huge strength and something that I lean on for everything. Um, it's not so much the awareness that I struggle with. It's more taking the action on that. Um, but yeah, I think it's really just having the dedication to yourself to be able to ask yourself those questions and give honest answers and decide what is worth going, like what is worth doing about it, I guess. Some people choose like know that they're unhappy in something and they're just like, well, that's the way life is, or like, especially with jobs, I think, we kind of have been raised like nobody likes their job. You just go there and you do it and you make money and then you spend your weekends and your vacation days doing what you love. And just being able to say like, I'm not going to be okay with that. I don't want to live a life where, I really resonated with what you said when you were thinking about what what would I regret on my deathbed, or like what do I want to have done. And my answer is definitely not work a job I hate for 70 years to then finally start to do things that I like. Um and everyone's threshold for that is different, but my hope for everyone and my advice to everyone is just to ask those questions and be willing to be honest about the answers.
If you could picture freedom, um, like a picture, maybe even a painting, maybe even a video clip, what does freedom look like to you?
This one I know right away. It's large mountains and trees and a small house with a ton of animals. I hope that there's horses there and chickens um and I do kind of see it in a picture, but it's more like a moving picture, and there's a stream that goes through,
Mm.
and when I'm silent, the only thing that I hear is the stream running and the wind blowing through the trees and the animals, and that's all I feel. It's just like I feel like I can close my eyes, and when I see that, it's one of those things where I'm like, if I was there and I fell asleep and never woke up, like it would be fine, because that is like my ultimate vision of peace and freedom and happiness.
I know that a lot of people, uh, they might even feign the question of death, of like what would you do if, because people are generally not afraid of dying. I say, I think people are just afraid of how they die.
Yeah.
Maybe some other people are different though. Maybe it's the community of people that I'm with right now that they. I was talking to a guy, and I was asking him like, "How would you want to go?" He's like, "In the halls of like battle and glory." I was like, "Okay, it's like a very stereotypical like warrior answer." We were in Muay Thai training. I like to do a lot of martial arts as well. But then he asked me, and I was like in my bed, like old, and I think it was kind of like that playful, like, oh man, like the disrespect. Like I can't believe you wouldn't want to die like a warrior. But yeah, it was just a sidebar, but yeah, I definitely ask because the picture of freedom I think changes perhaps annually for me. At first, I thought it was owning a lot of real estate. I was blessed to be able to work really hard, and I have two rental properties currently. But I realized that I was working hard to make more money, working hard to have more material things. Granted, like don't get me wrong, like real estate is great. Like I'd like to believe I'd be able to retire by like 55, which is my goal. I'd like to retire by like, I mean, if I got really lucky, I'd like to be able to retire at like 47 would be great. But I realized that I wasn't chasing purpose, and I was starting to become bitter in my relationships, bitter in my workplace, bitter with myself. So yeah, I think that's such a profound thought that you have, and I think a lot of people could definitely take a piece from your playbook. I believe. What are some things that you are wanting to work on right now, but you can't? like in the sense of like I know you're working on the podcast, things that you don't have time for, but like you really want to do.
Oh, that's such a good one too. There's a couple, and I'll add that not just time, but other resources as well. Like perhaps I don't have the money um, for it or the space, but I really, along with that vision of freedom, I really want to grow my own food. I would love to never
Ah,
have to buy another vegetable um,
very cool.
or fruit, even if, if that means like exchanging with the farm down the road that has things that I don't have. Um, and I have like a garden bed that we just haven't set up yet. And I get caught up in this mentality spiral where I'm like, well, I set it up, but then how much time am I going to have to like do it? I'm trying to do all of these things, and I really like the, I don't know if it's a phrase or a like a mantra or whatever, but you can have everything, just not all at once. And I think that's so true. Like there's things that
I say that all
um
the time. That's so cool.
yes. And it's just so it's honestly such a good reminder too, because sometimes I do get in this panic where I'm like, I just want to be doing this. I want to be having like riding horses and taking eggs for my own chicken and riding or picking fruits and vegetables from my garden. But I'm like, how can I do all of that when I don't even know how? I have to learn, and I want to work on my podcast, and I have all these things that I need to manage. Um, and ideally, when I'm in a place of another way of freedom, right, where I have the time and the freedom to do that, I would love to do that. I would love to be a little bit more up to speed on like feng shui. Like I'm super interested in that and being able to um, spend more intention and meaningful time, like thinking about how I want my house organized. And um, yeah, I would love to ride horses again and um, all of these things that, again, I just have to remind myself like, I not only can I, but I fully believe in my body, or at least I want to believe subconsciously that like I will have all of those things. It's not right in front of me, but it's in my future, it's down my path. And I'll get there, I think, when I master a little bit more of the things that I'm working on now, like being intentional and being present and not being afraid of going after the things that I want, um and really showing up as me and authentically me. So those are some of the big ones. A lot of like health stuff too. Like I think again, like I know a very high level about Ayurveda, and I would love to be able to focus a bit more on like really like what am I eating, when am I eating it, in terms of like women are on a 28-day cycle. It's like, okay, sometimes it's better to be eating these things and not these things. And so I would love to be able to put time and attention into all of that stuff, um, that I just can't do right now. I still eat relatively well, but I would love to like really dig into like, okay, what am I feeling physically? What can I do with my activity level and my consumption and my water intake to fix those things?
Yeah, I definitely. I think maybe just because like I'm more of a meathead that I'm like, oh, like how much protein am I consuming? So I definitely am trying to be more mindful of. I'm not like a fruit person. Granted, like I don't like I eat a lot of vegetables too, but I would like to learn to eat more fruit. I have like a not like an aversion, but like I'll eat apples. Uh, oh, that's actually really sad. I think it's like I'll eat bananas. Like I'll eat bananas and apples. And then like on the rare occasion, like I'll eat dragon fruit if I can find it. But yeah, like I don't really
Fancy.
eat a lot of yeah, I don't eat a lot of fruit. Definitely like a lot of vegetables though. Like if you'll give me like Like those family packs of like Caesar salads, I could probably eat one to myself. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I don't know. I guess yeah,
Have you
that's
tried a
what
lot of fruits?
yeah. I'm Filipino personally, so like mom and dad will just like give a bunch of fruit, but like I know you're gonna crucify me. I'm not a fan of avocados, like at all. For some reason, and they're like a staple in the fitness community and stuff too. And I I can't eat them. Um, well, actually, there was a time where like my grandmother force fed me avocados. Like she put 8 avocados in a bowl. She cut them up.
That's
She
a
put
lot.
brown sugar and milk. Yeah, and she forced me to eat them all. When I was like, I think 9 or 10, 9 or 10, and yeah, like I just like ever since then, I was not a fan. Uh, yeah, so like avocados, like I know avocado. I mean tomatoes are technically a fruit, so I destroy tomatoes. Um, but yeah, like and like I'll eat like blueberries and stuff too. But yeah, yeah, I think I think that's definitely something that I should be more hyper aware of. Really, yeah. Are you a fan of like quinoa and stuff too? Like, do you eat a bunch of grains and legumes?
Yeah, been definitely trying to increase my legume intake because, again, that's actually super one, it's high in protein. Like I'm not a vegetarian, but I am trying to be mindful of where I get the meat. Like we go to a butcher um that like it's a local farm, because I could go down a whole thing about like the meat industry,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, trying to eat more legumes. I do like quinoa, although I'll say it's one of those things that like when other people make it, chef's kiss. I cannot appropriately make quinoa. It's either too watery and like I don't like the sponginess, or it's too hard and they're like cracking in between my in between my teeth. So like I like quinoa, and if I get a chance to get it in like a Buddha bowl, or like my aunts and mom make it all the time, they're like, yeah, we're just like having salad with some quinoa. Great, but I don't know what it is. The quinoa gods have not blessed me with the ability to make it
Quinoa.
well. So
I gotcha. Yeah, I was actually vegetarian for 6 months. The hardest thing for me to give up was sushi.
oh
So when I went with my brothers, I was like, yeah, I'll get vegetarian rolls, which was a lie. And yeah, I just unfortunately became I mean, I'm not like too harsh on myself or others if they do consume meat or animals. Granted, I'm not even vegan. I never was even vegan. But I definitely did appreciate the vegetarian lifestyle. I noticed not getting headaches like ever, and I never had BO, body odor. That was like the biggest one. Granted, like a lot of
interesting.
Asians, they don't really get a lot of BO to begin with, but like this is really gross. I was playing video games for like I think it was 3 or 4 days straight. Like I would wake up, drink water, eat like maybe a little bit, and then I would just play games. I don't remember what game I was playing, but it was like for 4 days. But at the time, I was vegetarian, and I asked my grandma at the time if I smelled, and she's like, "No, you smell really good." And I don't know, yeah, like that I just attribute to eating just plants and rice and quinoa.
That's so interesting. I definitely sweat a lot. I guess I don't know if I stink or not. I guess you kind of get used to your own smell, so I'm not sure, but I would be interested to know if that's related because I could totally see, especially they call, like when you go to the Brazilian steakhouse, they call it the meat sweats. So it's like maybe it is related.
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? I mean, I'm not a dietitian or a like a food professional. I just the extent of my food experience is like cooking my own meals and meal preps.
Yeah.
But wow, unfortunately, we are hitting closing time. It's already been an hour, so Um,
Wow.
yeah,
I
this
feel like I
has
could
been
talk to you
a
forever, honestly.
yeah. I mean, I know that you have a podcast. It would be great to be on your podcast, Authentic
Definitely.
AF, on Spotify and everywhere. I'm sure that you have it on. It'd be great to be able to be a guest.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, just like friends, if you ever just want to chat, like I feel like we have so much crossover and so many things we could talk about just offline. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that'd be really dope. And I'm this is really the biggest reason I started the podcast too was it's I say it's being able to help people in the macro, but it's very like a selfish intrinsic reason because like if I were to talk to anybody of the podcast guest caliber, they would have just told me to fuck right off. I've been like, dude, I don't want to talk to you for an hour or two. Like, who are you? And so this is just a platform for me to be able to have these types of conversations with different people. So um, yeah, do you have any closing thoughts?
well, I really resonate with all of that, similar to why I started my podcast. Closing thoughts. Dang, I ask every guest this too, and I feel like I'm like, oh man, if I'm ever on a podcast, I'm gonna have something great to say, and now I feel like I didn't plan it out at all. Um,
didn't have didn't
Closing
Might not have
thoughts. I
like a
really
planned
don't.
closing thought,
Just
but all your answers were like, you are
just
definitely
that
a
I hope
podcast host.
that everyone listening has these kinds of conversations with someone. It doesn't have to be live on air. It doesn't have to be, with anyone of like social status, but I think conversations like these are so pivotal and so important in our own growth and our ability to connect with others, which I truly believe lack of community is like the biggest pandemic we're all facing. Like lack of connection with others, with ourselves, with nature. And so, if anyone listening is inspired by this conversation or any of your conversations that you have on here, I hope that they feel empowered to have these own conversations in their own life. And I just really encourage and want that for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Auxano. Be well and walk tall.